Hello everyone, my name is Michele Zadra. I am a second year PhD student at the University of Southampton. And today I'm going to present my research project to the point I got so far, which is about political participation of EU citizens in England. So to give briefly a bit of context to my research, EU migrants or EU citizens are a big minority in the UK. There are approximately between 5.5 and 6% of the whole British populations. This migration is an old migration. It started mainly from in the 20th centuries or even in the late 19th centuries, but the vast majority of actual EU citizens who live in the UK arrived especially after the enlargement of the European Union, which included the Eastern European countries in 24. So from 24 to 26, more than 5 million EU citizens came to the UK. However, Brexit, of course, has changed this trend. So the number of incoming EU citizens has gone down since 2016 by 70%, 75%. That's is a 2019 estimate from Heaton. The ONS actually estimated there were at least in 2019 3.5 million of EU citizens live in the UK, of which 3 million, so a big part of them in England. It is true that if you want to look into the number of EU SS applications, so the EU settlement scheme, which were completed at the end of June this year, so a few days ago, already in March there were more of 5 million applications. So the actual number is probably higher than the ONS estimate. However, is not 5 million is not the actual figure, because there are the way actually the USS count the application make possible that some migrants may have left, or they might be relatives that actually are not European. So the actual numbers might be probably lower than 5 million, so somewhere in between 3.5 million and 5 million. In any case, is a relevant and important minority in the UK. So EU citizens have right to vote locally at local elections, and they got this right from the European treaties in 1992, so the Maastricht Treaty. However, we know from different studies that, in general, migrants are less engaged in politics than natives, citizens, and that across the European Union, EU citizens, so non-native EU citizens, tend to vote less than actually native citizens. There are several studies that confirm that. And in the UK, although we don't have a comprehensive study of the electoral turnout of EU citizens, we know that in average there is a 10% gap between British citizens and European citizens when it comes to local elections, which is already British citizens already have a quite low turnout in the range of 30-35, so 1 on 3, between 30-25%. For EU citizens, then it becomes 1 on 4 approximately, so somewhere between 20-25%. Also candidatures, because EU citizens can also run for office, but candidatures of EU citizens are very rare, extremely rare, and of course actual councillors, so elected representatives that are EU citizens and not born in the UK, are even more rare. So the fact there is such a big minority, and which is um, not disenfranchised, but less politically engaged mm, than the native citizens, and also not just electorally, but even in other forms of participations. And the fact that there is a possibility that the British government might decide at any moment to revoke the right to vote at local elections, because, of course, being the UK not part of the European Union anymore, this right is no longer guaranteed by the European treaties. So that is completely up to the British government to maintain it or not. And so there is a concrete risk of political marginalization of, as I said, of an important part of the residents of UK. So this situation raised two different types of issues. One is normative, based on democratic theory. So when such a big minority is in fact not participating, are political decisions which are taken on the presumptions that those that take the decision represent the whole population, are they still legitimate? That's a normative question. But also there is a more concrete political issues that raises from this problem, is that, of course, if your citizens do not engage politically in any way, their voices are not heard, and probably their needs are not met by politicians, because they don't know what they want, and ultimately they don't even count because they're not relevant for local politicians. This is not just a political problem, but it can become a real social and economic problem, because you have a minority which is not becomes not part of it is marginalized from the fabric of the society somehow, because it's not accounted for at political level. However, this is a scenario which hasn't been studied a lot in the past. So we know very little about political participation of youth citizens in England, which has given me the real motivation to go on with this project. So there is a knowledge gap which I aim to fulfill with my PhD. The objective of this PhD is then to understanding how social, cultural, and institutional frameworks influence youth citizen political participation at local level in England. From this objective stems two different research questions. One is more generic, so an exploratory questions. What are the characteristics of political participation of youth citizens across English local government? And another one is, can local governments create opportunities for youth citizen political participation? So can local governments actually influence through their policies the level and the quality of political participation of youth citizens in their councils? So my research is comparative in nature, mostly qualitative, but not only. Is a mixed method research, so there is also a quantitative component. It's divided in two main phases. Phase one is a web content analysis of all English local government website. The aim of the web content analysis is to actually collect data that I've used to select my cases. This web content analysis is based on my personal observation, which are qualitative criteria, but also some quantitative measurement of features that this website have not, or to what extent do they have it. So what I did concretely was look into what participatory tools online, because we are talking about websites, were offered by these councils, and also look into how actually these tools work, so their quality, in fact. And on the other hand, the support that was given by the Council to EU citizens during Brexit. The population of local council in England is 340. The second phase, which I'm about to start now, I'm literally starting in these weeks, is a in-depth small n comparative analysis of 4 English local administrations, of 4 English local council, which represent a spectrum of both the components that I was mentioning before. So on one hand, the participatory attitude of the council, given by the type and quality of the online participatory channels, and the inclusiveness towards your citizens. So how, if the council actually do they care to include your citizens within their decision-making process, which of course was measured through the support given through Brexit. So the case selection strategy is based on diverse cases, which basically means that within a population, you should have cases that are diverse and so represent a bit of the two ends of a spectrum, and which this allow to have a broader generalization compared to typical cases, because the assumption is actually, if you analyze and compare the kind of extreme of a spectrum of a range of possible causes of a political phenomenon, then you should be able also to catch what happens in between these extremes, the ends of the spectrum. So in my case, as I said before, there were 2 variables that I used to determine my cases. One is support to your citizens, as I said, through our Brexit, and the other one is the online participatory tools offered by the council on their websites. So the second one, the latter, how I measure it is basically I gave 3 levels, qualitative levels, so low, medium, and high. Inclusiveness, participatory inclusiveness, of course, determined by presence or absence of online panels, which are common tools used by local council to gather people's opinions on different matters, but are not statutory in any means and are not as popular as others online tools like e-consultation or e-petition. So they actually signify a concrete effort from the council to engage their citizens into the policy making. Then another level, which actually determines a real intention to include the whole population, which of course means also your citizens, is the presence of selection strategies. For instance, if the council actively engage with possible candidates from a specific demographic to make sure they are represented in the panel, and or if they then based on the application they receive, do they select them to make sure that every demographic or ethnic group is represented. The EU Citizen Support Scale, very briefly, is based on 5 different levels, so basically from 0, no support, to EU population during Brexit, at least what appears from the website, but of course the website is informative in this case, so if there's no information whatsoever, it's very likely that probably there was no support whatsoever given by the council. So that's level 1. Intermediate, levels up to the highest one, so the highest level of support, which is the 5th one, which is where the council have a very informative page, and not just that, also they offer free individual bespoke support to apply for the USS, for example, for the settlement scheme. And I underline the word free because many councils were, yes, devoting resources to offer this kind of support, but it wasn't free, it was paid. And so those that actually were in the situation, I put them in the level below the 5th one, the 4th one, because the fact that they decided to have it for free means the council is actually using their own financial resources to help your citizens, which, given the budget constraint that all England councils are facing at the moment, is to me is a sign of a proper, real commitment to help your citizens. So this is finally, this is actually the table that represents the 4 cases I've selected. How did I get there? I basically, when I've completed the web content analysis, I decided to apply some scoping conditions to the results of the analysis according to the 2 variables that I've described before. And I decided to look only at, well, this is a decision made before, so to look only at England local governments rather than the UK, because, as I say, to maintain the same legal frame and administrative framework across all cases, because in Wales and Scotland or Northern Ireland there are differences. They're not exactly the same because of the nature of the UK administrative system and the regulation. And also 90%, as I say, approximately 9% of your citizens live in England. So this is by far the biggest part of your citizens live in England. So it made sense to look only to England cases. Then I look only into more metropolitan boroughs and unitary authorities, which are 2 categories of local administrative governments in England, just because they have the same powers. More or less, they share the same power, so they're highly comparable. While other kind of like district council or county councils, they have different powers, so the comparison will not be. I will be comparing orange with apples, to be honest. And then to keep the size of the cities comparable, of the towns comparable, I decided to look at medium-sized councils, so between 100k population and 400k population, which is in Britain is mid-size, so below 100k because a bit too small, and above 400k they are only big cities, which of course offer different dynamics. Then also, but that is to increase the homogeneity between cases, but to make sure also was covering the whole spectrum, and not just regarding the 2 variables mentioned before, but also in other aspects. I decided to have to apply a geographical spread. So I picked cases from different regions of the country, and also not to have cases with different size of EU populations. So to see also maybe the local governments with a bigger population may be more affected by more. They might have different behaviors than actually governments with smaller populations. So eventually I got a 3x3 table, but since in my case I have to be diverse, I discarded the medium value, so I kept only the high and the low values, end up with a 2x2 tables, high, low, according your participatory inclusiveness and support to your citizens. And eventually the 4 cases were Haringey, which is in London, has a 30% of the population coming from born in EU countries, so 1/3 basically, 1 on 3. Then on the high quadrant. Then on the high-low quadrant in terms of participatory inclusiveness, I have Coventry, which is 12%, so still a sizable minority of the population come from the EU. And finally, on the other end, on the second column, Torbay, which has high participatory inclusiveness but low support to your citizen, but only 3% of the population come from the EU. And eventually the only one left is low, the quadrant low, so low participatory inclusiveness and low support to European citizens, which is Portsmouth, which is something in between Coventry and Torbay in terms of EU population size, which is 7.5%. So is not a big minority, but still not an irrelevant one, like maybe could be Torbay. Okay, so this is all for me. I went over time. I hope it was interesting, and I'm looking forward to read your comments and answer your question. Thank you very much.